usually what excites you for real estate investors for this planning? You can start with you and then at the same.
Yeah, to me, what excites me, right? I feel like it's exactly from the budget by the inflation. Target inflation of 6 to 8% that we're projecting to achieve. Why I say this is, if you look at real estate, most of these constructions materials, most of them are actually imported. So the lower inflation rate implies that obviously we'll get these materials at a cheaper rate, right? To me, that's a good thing, and sort of excites me. The budget cannot achieve it. We hope we still have the general, but if we achieve it, we expect to see a lot of materials for construction being way cheaper than we anticipate, or prices not going up as they used to in the past, right?
In terms of property itself and regulations, there haven't been too many adjustments. As a firm, we obviously engaged earlier and we wrote we would like to have seen some of the areas, in terms of maybe some of the taxes, things like that, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. But for me, what excited me was transport and logistics, the emphasis on that, the policies, the support, the budget support. Kasama has been very busy. That's we were all relatively new. Obviously, we're waiting for the Ndola, the Saka Road to be completed, but that's going to create opportunities for real estate, new nodes along the road. And the connectivity will allow for new nodes everywhere around the country. We're a big country. We're same size as Texas in America, 3 times the size of the UK. So there's a lot of development that needs to be done to be able to support these provinces.
I think it's the approach that the government is taking to be able to involve the private sector in delivering some of what is to the country. But for example, Tim has mentioned, we need a private sector led economy. Yes, the state will continue to have its instruments, which are state-owned enterprises and public agencies, but pretty much the fact that the government is looking at having PPPs as a strong within which to be able to deliver a lot of the infrastructure gives an opportunity for participation for real estate developers, real estate players. And PPP transaction, you start from the acquisition of land. So even the private sector can provide land. The government can provide the level incentives, including the ability to collect laws and so on. That all that comes together, I think it's money. In the economy, we need more of that. So that for me is a strong one. If you look at the mention of government, the minister on PPPs, there's PPPs on energy, there's PPPs on road infrastructure. The dollar, second to carriage is one of those examples. There are 3 or 4 very exciting PPP projects that I think will be delivered 2026, 2027. The Suarez Kipushi road, very easily is an annual, $2-3 billion road by what it will carry. The Rwanda West to Kampimba Road project as well. These are opening, the important borders we have with the DRC into Lubumbashi and into Kolwezi. And the whole of SADC essentially looks at that as a huge opportunity. Being in the neighborhood, we must be able to take advantage.
You mentioned something about government and copper in the economy, and we see that copper is not very much. We see our budget being void, But are we putting our eggs in the proverbial copper basket, or should diversification remain priority?
Yeah, I think the strategy is right. Any country needs to be able to start with its best bets. For our case, minerals, copper is what we have as one of those immediate endowments. We also have a store of talent, built over years, miners who can be able to mine and get stuff onto the ground. We have a global economy that is looking for copper, cobalt, that is looking for uranium. Gold has always been shiny here, being strong. And so we are not just mining for the sake of mining. We are actually mining our way out, hopefully, of concentration, from copper-led economy perhaps, down the line to one that will be driven by agriculture. The beef, story is one that you can see is very strong. The government wants to drive that. So we have to be able to start with the resources we have now.
So we heard continue from what you said that there is a story beyond copper. Now, in your own words, from an economic perspective, besides mining, what other sectors offer potential growth, especially for waste investors?
Yeah, thanks. I think what I can just be that question, to me, well, one, the agriculture story, right? But like for me, it's agriculture and agribusiness. Why I say this? If you look at what Tim Moving said, the real estate opportunities now are not from the urban per se, but almost behind rural. Why do I say this? If you look at this agriculture and agribusiness, the beef story, there will be need for things like probably a warehouse for maize, if you want to do a proper harvest. Do places like Chipata, as an example, have sufficient warehouses when they harvest their maize? I don't think so. I think that's still fact-based. People need to store maize in small batches and transport back to the southern province where there's lots of cattle. We have enough refrigeration facilities. I don't think we're there yet. Do we have enough houses to where we expect to do the $1 billion export of beef? I don't think so. So that's sort of creates a huge opportunity in your estate. And specifically not within the urban areas. Now it's sort of going to rural areas and all these opportunities. And we spoke about mining, right? I mean, not just to go back to mining, northwestern province, there's a huge demand for real estate that is sort of a selective. The other day I had a conversation with one of my friends. They actually mentioned that I actually struggled to find a place in northwestern province, right? This place that I've got resident. Yes. Do we have sort of enough housing there for people that want to sort of mine the gold, the artisanal mining? I don't think we do. So what I see the trend is that the demand for real estate is moving away from urban areas, more of the rural areas, obviously because of these government incentives. And the story I was talking about is just agriculture, specifically from the maize and the beef. We have enough facilities. I don't think so. I think that's a huge opportunity.
So seeing strong copper prices, good harvest, and the good tourism story as well. Are we seeing sustainable macro stability, or is Zambia still vulnerable to extreme shocks in your estimate? What do you think?
Well, I think unfortunately every country is subject to external shocks these days. Zambia is not alone, but I think we're becoming more resilient. So that's the points that are going up from the comments from Alfred and Lana really is that we're able to start to withstand some of these shocks by creating our own resilience internally in some of these sectors and a stronger macroeconomy. I think what I mentioned, USA, where it's an external shock that none of us sort of expected or planned for. In terms of what we saw in the property market, it was quite significant, with a number of owners of properties losing their tenants on the residential side, all around the country, but also in some as well, because they had projects everywhere, and then also office space as well. So in the USA, we're in a lot of buildings around. So I think we live in a world today where we have to expect something different almost every day.
How has current load shedding as of right now affected your sector?
It's made it more expensive. Short answer. And how has that been? Well, if you're a developer, you're an existing property owner, you're having to run the buildings, there's no power. So then you have to source alternative energy, whether it's solar or a generator, inverters. I think the government have enabled, over the last couple of years, not only in this budget, a reduction in the cost of bringing in solar and inverters and batteries, where there was a zero rating on VAT, and I think duty there's no duty on those. But at the end of the day, depending on what type of property owner you are, it's an expensive operation. Even if it's just for your house at home, if you have a small house, 4 apartments you're renting out, that's an extra cost. And you can't recover that immediately. If you put your rent up, then sometimes that can be an issue with your tenants and finding tenants depending where your location is. If you own even a medium-sized shopping centre, those are the challenges again, because that's a lot more expensive to put solar on a roof of a 10,000 square metre retail centre. So it's pushed up the costs. The other side of it is that the drought, which led to the energy issues and the problems, has forced us to move quicker into a sustainable energy solution, which we wouldn't have done so quickly. So it's forced us to adapt to become perhaps more green buildings. Now we don't quite know whether the power is on or off sometimes, and we don't quite know when it's going to come back to some sort of normality. So if you drive around now, you see a lot more solar panels. Everybody's had to source solar but it's made it more expensive. Yes, it's made us more green, green buildings and green solutions, which in itself has caused more problems, because I think it's somewhere that we need to go further into in the design, the sustainability of these buildings and how best we them.
But coming to you, Bwana, are developers already factoring the cost of backup power into the property prices?
Yes. I mean, into the developments of one to start with, because you can't price it if you haven't built it and you don't intend to build it. So you would have to be living dangerously as a developer not to factor in backup power. I mean, the story of energy, the sufficiency and even surplus, I think goes into 2027. I mean, the Minister of Finance himself said, even if we didn't have the drought and Kariba was, having the best waters, just the amount of demand by the industrial players, miners, and so on, and others, already would leave us in a deficit. So it's not just a water hydro issue; it's the fact that the growth that we are on right now is creating a huge demand for power. If you are a developer, you have to be able to find the fact that between when this crisis started, probably into 2027, and the biggest power that is probably coming, is there are solar farms that are already in development.
I have a question for the panel. Does our government have a favorable policy or a funding mechanism for local investors like me who own land and want to develop a residential community on the state land located in Lusaka?
Not from a commercial perspective, because currently I think the amount of funding gives in terms of property. And in Lusaka, you've seen where there's been a bit of infrastructure, there's a lot of housing demand. So there, you don't really try to share not a commercial, but just a local property. We are sort of oriented to get rentals there. Also, agriculture is sort of key, aspect of agriculture as well. I mean, you get the plants, harvest, the beef production, you can get warehouses, the cold storage facilities. That will also give you a good opportunity.
Which main sectors, in your view, from this year's budget, I imagine as real estate rock stars, creating opportunities for investors?
I think that if we were to choose one sector at the moment, I personally would think about two, if I could say two. So it's very difficult to focus because the opportunities around the country. I would say look at tourism. I really think there's opportunities there in tourism. And I think in logistics. And logistics linked to the infrastructure opportunities and the new nodes that are going to come up around the country.
Can one get a title of customary land if your name is entered into the village book, specifically to land from my area?
So interesting. We have a 50-acre piece of land in the Chifrema area, and the Chifrema area is heating up now. There are all kinds of interesting posh vehicles that head into the Chifrema area, all the way to a place called Nankanga. That's a hill that looks like a table mountain, closer to the Chiawa area. So yes, you can be able to convert that customary land. It follows a process, the same one that I had described. You must, ensure that your interest in the land exists in village.
So coming to Tim and Swati, so what mechanisms should investors explore to access this type of finance?
Yeah, I think in terms of mechanisms, financial mechanisms, there probably aren't as many as we would like to see in the market right now. In terms of, we touched on new bonds and financing for this type of development. So it would be I know that the Bank of Zambia came out with some fund, but that was after the drought. It wasn't specifically for real estate, that was more for generally for projects, infrastructure, mortgaging. So I think it's something that we as institutions and estate agents, and Pro and others, need to engage with the ministries and finance and Bank of Zambia and others and the banks to see if we can work with them. Because I don't think there's an instrument of bother like something that I'm not aware of sort of more specific sort of refinancing or financial instrument from the bank, which would be against a cheaper rate to develop a building. So I think it's something that we really need to look at. I don't know what you think about it.
Yeah, I think this is an area that is just kind of like going to blossom. And I want to expand it slightly beyond the solar situation. Refinancing for a big agro player should come by way of thinking about the carbon finance from carbon trading. The very crops that they grow are considered to be part of carbon sequestration, and so we need to actually have information in the market, and that's what is missing right now. What agreements has the government signed?
So what are some of the risks ones investing in real properties? And also, how can estate agents guide investors on producers of rural versus rural setting, and also country land purposes?
Yeah, so I think on the risk side, one is demand. Statistically, you may not actually find information that you can build a solid case on in terms of is there sufficient demand for a property type if you build it to ensure that it's taken up by the market in the area. So that is always the first thing that you need. The next thing for any estate agent development is about location. Is this rural area just a rural area, or is there a story to this rural area? So I'll give you a typical example. There will be stories to these minerals in the northwest, the Serengeti area. So it's not just a rural area, but it's a rural area with a very strong economic story. That location is in an area where there is minerals that needs to be exploited. That completely makes it an attractive location to invest in. So once you are past the issue of demand, the next thing is location. The next thing is also what are you intending to be able to use the property for? If it's a farm, almost definitely, urban areas will not be able to find 10,000 hectares of land, even if you wanted it in Kamwanda. So as a result, you need to be able to go further out.
Thank you so much for creating such a very good collaboration. This has been Cedric Chuma for Diaspora Connect. Thank you so much for being part of our